This is the Rife Research Laboratory, Point Loma, California. This is Royal R. Rife, the research scientist of this laboratory. This is narrated by John Crane, the principal scientist in this laboratory was Royal R. Rife, R-I-F-E, who had worked in research on cancer and many other diseases from 1920 to 1942. This is the chemical apparatus of the laboratory, part of it. The cultures are in this cabinet, which had to be protected from the radiation of the electromagnetic energy developed by Rife's ray tube instruments. There were many sterilizers in the laboratory, one being 15 feet long for the sterilization of glassware and other research items. These are hot water steam heaters. There was a complete machine shop in the laboratory for tool work, making microscopes, and providing any of the facilities needed for the research. This research was sponsored by the Rife Virus Microscope Institute, by Life Lab Incorporated, and by the John F. Crane Corporation, set up for continuing Rife's research. Every room was completed in itself. Nothing was taken from one room to another. Rife was a world traveler and a great marksman. He had 40 of the most beautiful guns made in those days. This is Rife's office, his desk. This is a vault where he kept some radium and other valuable materials used in the experiments on cancer. Rife had about 1,000 albino rats in the basement, which he used to grow tumors from a virus he isolated, a cancer virus, which was isolated and injected into the rats. These are steam sterilizers in a sterilization room. This is a surgery room in which the glassware and other surgery items were used in the operations on the rats by Rife. This is the main surgery table where the rats were, or the other animals were operated on. These are pictures of the surgical instruments used by Rife. Rife was assisted by many MDs that worked with him during this research. This is the optical room in which the microscopes and the Leitz optical bench is shown in the background, with his universal microscope, the Rife microscope, published by the Smithsonian Institution and the Franklin Institute. This was one of 5 instruments that Rife designed and built with the help of his colleagues. This is a 1,000,000-volt X-ray. This is a stop-motion photomicrograph machine. that was used to make delayed versions of the growing of flowers or the growing of viruses, the growing of plants, the growing of worms, which were all recorded. This is a Scania research camera, 35 millimeter, that Rife used in his work. And this is a number 2 microscope. A virus microscope was a prismatic instrument. And this is a number 3 universal microscope, prismatic type. That embodied all fields of microscopy, including dark field, polarized light, infrared light, ultraviolet light, and monochromatic beam light. The indicator dial moved around 7 times to move the object up and down 1 micron, and it was a very sensitive instrument. The ocular that you see on the left side in the middle of the instrument, when that was plugged in, made it a standard microscope. Now, in isolating cancer virus in 1931, Rife took an ulcerated human breast mass from the Paradise Valley Sanitarium donated by Dr. R.T. Hamer, who was assistant superintendent of the Paradise Valley Sanitarium and Hospital. Portions of this tumor were cut out and filtered through a triple-aught porcelain Berkfeld filter, which gave about 10 micron filtration. The virus could readily pass through a filter of this degree of closeness. The test tubes that are used or shown here are irradiated for 24 hours with neon argon or krypton gas, in which, like a fluorescent light, the radiation caused the virus to become virulent. Rife could then grow tumors in weeks instead of months with this radiation. The test tubes were placed in a 2-inch water vacuum and irradiated for 24 hours as they progressed up the test tube holder. Everything is flamed to sterilize the bacteria, to sterilize the cotton that held it, and the solutions. Every time one test tube disappears, it means that there's an elapsed time of 24 hours between the radiation of the lights. This shows some of the experimental animals in the basement. Rife had over 1,000 animals, mostly albino rats. The rats were injected with a very tiny needle from the virus that he had filtered and isolated, and the tumors would be allowed to grow to be 2 or 3 grams heavier than the rat. These are some of the rats that you see now. Rife had about 12 men that worked in this laboratory to keep everything spotlessly clean and sterilized. The next picture shows the injecting of the cancer virus in the rat. The mammary gland was used of the rat because it came out of the mammary gland of a human breast mass. The rat was given a partial anesthesia to avoid the shock of the needle, and the virus was injected in the rat. point of the injection is shown in the forward part of the rat. Rife would then allow the cancer tumors to grow, and there you can see the tumor in the rat. He would surgically remove the tumor and treat the rat with his ray tube instruments, which frequencies would devitalize the cancer virus without harm to the human or the animal cells of the rat. Rife used high-powered glasses for his operations in order to get down to fine details of the removal. The tumor is tied off and cut away, in which the cancer virus can again be isolated from that tumor, and going into other rats with the injections of over 400 times to prove that the virus that he isolated was the cause of the cancer tumor. Now this shows the tumor coming out of triple distilled water, and a portion of that tumor is being cut away so that you can observe the cancer virus under Rife's microscopes. Rife had the only microscopes in the world that could see the cancer virus or any other virus alive, and he studied them for years, which is all recorded in the Polarity Research Manual in the first section called Electron Therapy. Everything that you see is triple distilled. This is triple distilled water going in. He's going to gently grind up the cancer tumor to extract the virus. This is a Berkfeld filter, porcelain filter, similar to Dresden China unglazed. The liquid material is poured into the test tube, and a drop is removed from that liquid, which Rife will shortly place on a slide which has been sterilized with flame. The liquid material is withdrawn from a micro pipette made by Rife into the solution, and a drop is placed on the slide and covered with a cover slip made of quartz. Rife used quartz slides because the light passed through better than glass. Now the ray tube is above Rife, which will be turned on later to kill the virus. The instrument is to the left of Rife, the black instrument, which is a ray tube instrument. It consists of being a transmitter, which Rife could tune the frequencies which he knew would kill the virus, just like a voice would crack a glass. Now, these are the first pictures ever made of the cancer virus. These cancer materials were motile, streamlined shapes like a fish, which Rife said would travel at speeds of 400 miles per hour if the comparable distance were measured in ordinary air. This is an air bubble coming in from the right-hand side of the slide because the slide was not sealed. Our Rife will now turn on the ray tube instrument, which will activate the light. It'll have a little flash, and that'll be all it is to kill all the virus in the room. Just on for a few seconds. This ray tube instrument had a capacity of 500 watts, which would transmit this energy 10 to 12 miles in around the whole area. And this shows the virus after it's been treated with the ray tube instruments, which has a resonant frequency that killed the virus and they're all clumped together, agglutinating in the field. This shows the ray colors, not the colors, but the ray emanations. You'll see the colors pretty soon. The lethal frequencies of the electromagnetic emanations are shown here in these first slides ever made of oscilloscope patterns, which were shown in the Detroit Electronic Convention in 1942. These spikes of these frequencies are primarily the killers of the virus, which actually the internal energy is built up in the virus and they just disintegrate into pieces, so there's no life left to grow again. The various frequencies that can be generated by an oscillator are put on a carrier wave in the diathermy range, which ranges from 13 million cycles per second up to 42 million cycles per second. And this shows the amplification of the signal going into the carrier wave, and the slower frequencies now are being shown, which they can be varied with harmonics and other square wave waveforms that were later found to be much more effective than sine wave or triangular wave or other waveforms that have been tried for years. This is an Abrams oscillator, a deadbeat oscillator that generated the frequencies which you see here for the spikes coming up to kill the cancer virus or any other virus. Worms were also devitalized up to 10 feet long with a few seconds treatment. Rife tested Abrams' deadbeat oscillator and found that it worked also, in addition to his own electromagnetic energy systems. This research has all been suppressed by the American Medical Association, by Morris Fishbein, who also tried to suppress all of the reports and scientific publications from the Rife Research Laboratory. The principal publications of the microscope and of the research on cancer and many other diseases was published by the Smithsonian Institution and by the Franklin Institute in 1944. Copies of this document will be made available for any person wishing to secure one. Rife was demonstrating here that 5 frequencies could be put on the same carrier wave, which was unheard of at that time. The person that benefited from this was a telephone company, and today I understand they're using over 100 frequencies on the same carrier wave. This work was in conjunction with Coolidge of General Electric, who furnished the ray tubes. This is a picture of the interior of the laboratory of John F. Crane in San Diego. Years later, in which the instruments were set up again to do further research from 1950 to the present time. This is an optical bench, Bosch and Lomb, for studying metallograph work and also bacteria work. This is a Leitz optical bench in which the microscope could be put over that. It could be either horizontal or vertical, and was mounted on springs so it would be free of the Earth's shocks. This is a petrographical micropolariscope used by Rife for chemical analysis and for observation of the bacteria and virus, which was transmitted up through the 40-inch bellows of the Leitz optical bench so that photomicrographs could be made of the bacteria and other entities. This is a number 2 microscope. This is a number 4 microscope built by Rife and his assistants. Rife was a great machinist, had a tool and die maker working with him at all times. These are the controls of the instrument. That's a fine adjustment and the coarse adjustment on the top and the back. I'm demonstrating these controls to see them. This instrument was a loop which was wound for the neon or argon or krypton or xenon gases so that the test tubes could provide radiation to get the cancer virus virulent. This is a counter-rotating Risley prism in which the rays of the light were transmitted up through the instrument to stain the virus with the frequency of light. Now, this is a view of the close-up view of the Rife universal microscope, showing the dark field illuminator on the right side, which swung down into position for dark field illumination of syphilis bacteria and other dark field bacteria. Rife researched all of the bacteria, including Streptococcus, Staphylococcus, Streptothrix, leprosy, tuberculosis, gonorrhea, Streptothrix, and many other diseases. The microscope was also used for measuring the angles of crystals in crystallography. As you can see, it can be rotated through 3 planes, and the slide can be moved back and forth, up and down, in and out, and whatever angle it needed to be measured could be measured with a protractor indicator on the back of the microscope at the top, which was also coordinated with the angles of the movements that you just saw. The lights underneath the base of the microscope could be moved back and forth to use different types of light, such as infrared, ultraviolet, monochromatic beam light, and any other light that was desired. The microscope had prisms that went through both sides of it. This is the patented Rife microscope lamp, which took an ordinary automobile 21 candle power bulb and boosted it up to 1200 candle power with the reflector on the bottom, which you see there, and the condenser lens at the top of the unit. This is a Van Leeuwenhoek hanging drop microscope, first developed around 1600 by a Dutchman in Europe, in which you could see large bacteria like paramecium and other units of microorganisms. This is the original research instrument, which changed the ohms from 100,000 ohms to 1,000,000 ohms in steps of 1 ohm to vary the frequencies used in this ray tube, which you're seeing here now. This is the inside of the ray tube, activated by 8,000 volts. which helium gas was used to cause the radiation to kill the virus of cancer and other viruses. This is a standard X-ray tube converted with the helium gas so that it could be used, and this shows the change in the resonant frequencies to get different intensities of the light. Now we're going back to the original photomicrograph of the cancer virus, and then the new one that I patented, that I copyrighted in 1955 it was. This is a bacteria called typhoid, Bacillus typhosus, in which the bacteria has three viruses, one at the bottom, which you see, one at the side, and one at the top. When the polarity is negative in the body, the virus remain in the bacteria, but when it gets too negative, they're compressed and they're extruded from the bacteria. When it's positive, well, they remain in the bacteria and there's no disease. The feelers are shown on the lower right-hand portion of this picture. That's done with a stain that Rife developed to show the feelers. This was a dinner meeting at Dr. Milbank Johnson, M.D.'s home in Pasadena, honoring Rife and Dr. Arthur I. Kendall of Northwestern University Medical School. And this is the 40 doctors that attended that dinner. And they had Dr. Rufus von Klein-Smith, president of USC, was there. And his university was used to sponsor a clinic in 1934, which cured 16 hopeless cases. These pictures were taken after Rife passed away in 1972, showing the universal microscope again. Lower portion of it. This is one of the 6 ray tube instruments that were built by Allied Industries, which I owned. And these instruments were built by Kennedy of San Francisco.
We had a clinic in 34 in La Jolla. Dr. Milbank Johnson, a friend of mine, that was in Los Angeles. Well, he was one of the big brass of the Pacific Mutual Life Insurance Company, and what a millionaire. Incidentally, he was a medical politician, and he had the big whip. He could kind of show these boys in shape a little bit. And so we had this clinic. I didn't want to go it, but he said, all right, let's go ahead. That was just shortly after Miss Ellen Scripps died out there, and he rented a whole Ellen Scripps home. We run a clinic out there. We was there 90 days. We actually run a clinic about, I would say 70 days. We did actual clinical work. And first I told him I wanted it done in a legitimate order. First I told him, I said, I want you to surround on this committee with us a group of 6 of the biggest men you could pick in the United States. I said, you're a politician enough, you can do that. Which he did. He got Fisher of New York, he got Waylon Morrison, we got George Docks of Pasadena, and so on. And I says, I want as our pathologist, I want Alvin Ford, which is a friend of both of us, of course. Well, he says, good Lord, he says, you've looked at 1,000 tissues to Alvin's 1. It don't make any difference. I says, he is the president of the American Association of Pathologists. And I says, I want his name on every one of the cases we treat. Now I says, I want you to organize a special medical research committee under a bona fide university, which we did under the University of Southern California, which Dr. Johnson contributed their library and so on and so forth. Why, he carried a weight there too. We did it. We run the clinic. We got through. We did all reports, photographs before and after, this, that, and the other, of our 16 cases we had. At the end of the time when we had our meeting, Los Angeles Athletic Club up there, why, this board pronounced 14 of our cases clinically cured. Then, to finish up on some of these cases we had, he elected a doctor here in town to carry on this work. He picked him out of the group, an old country doctor. Dr. Johnson picked him out to carry on and finish up on some of these patients who wasn't quite through yet.